Rod, VIP LDP, maybe, says, do you have any tips for picking up the right choices between on and in as much as natives do? And I assume you mean native English speakers, not Native Americans or something like that. Well, let me just clarify the question, okay? Just to be clear, it's not making choices. It's using what's natural in the right situation. People who speak a language natively say the right thing, not because they're thinking, should I use this one? I feel like using this one today. But because they just learned how to say it that way. People aren't thinking about grammar. They're not thinking about correct usage when they speak. They just open their mouths. They have the intention to speak and a certain thing they want to say, and the right thing just comes out. Now, it's an interesting question about why it just comes out or how that happens. The real answer is a lifetime of exposure, particularly between the ages of something like 0 and 2, and then 2 and 7. The earlier, the better. You can learn a language natively when you're a baby very, very easily, and then throughout your life, you get constantly more and more and more examples. It makes it easier. So no choices are happening. Languages also are very organic. And so, yes, there are some rules, and you learn grammar rules and so on, but there are plenty of examples of times when the rules don't work, and plenty of things where you just have to kind of get a feeling for it. And that's all you can do, get a feeling for it. Because if you try to learn a rule, it may, in fact, do the reverse of what you hope and confuse you more. And I do feel that way for prepositions in particular. Okay? In and on are prepositions. Prepositions are little pieces of grammar: in, on, for, at, with, by, from, to. These connect things together. They give location, they give context when it's a noun related to another noun in particular, or sometimes we say it when it's some kind of action related to a thing or a noun, although that is often, in fact, adverbs. And sometimes something can be a preposition or an adverb. That is very common. Now, what about in and on? Well, the best thing we can do is try to get a feeling for this. So when I say in, let's start with in. What do you feel? Well, I think you probably know the basic meaning. A physical object in another physical object, like coffee in a cup. I have here a cup of coffee, and there is coffee in the cup. Now, does it make sense to say that the coffee is on the cup? Can I just say, let me use on? No, that doesn't make sense. Could coffee ever be on a cup? Well, I suppose if you had the cup flipped over and the coffee was a can of coffee, or a maybe little capsule of coffee, which is what I use to make my coffee, but that would be a pretty weird thing to say. So if you're talking about beverages or containers or things that hold other things, then we're pretty much always going to use in. That's the general physical definition. Now, it gets a little more complicated when it comes to things like being at work. Should we say I'm in the office or I'm at my office? Then it gets a little fuzzier. And actually both are correct, but it's a different focus. In is more the location of physically being there. At is more about the general place, right? The dot on the map, as opposed to being physically contained inside of the walls of my office. It's a different focus. Could I be on my office? I don't know what that means. That has no meaning when you say it. Doesn't sound right, doesn't sound natural. But I want to be clear when we use in, right? When we talk about things with the word in, we're not only talking about physical objects. We can use in for time, as I'm sure that you know. If we say something will happen in 30 minutes, that means from now, 30 minutes into the future. That's what that means. So a common time usage, let me just pop over here. A common time usage would be something like this. In 2 hours, I should do a comma there, right? We are leaving for Idaho. I don't know. Why Idaho? Why not? And put an exclamation. Why not? In 2 hours, we're leaving for Idaho. Well, that means from now, 2 hours into the future. Now, you might say, wait a second. What does that have to do with the other thing, with the inside, the location, a container? I don't think it has anything to do with it. I don't know why it's like that. It just is. So you just have to learn it. You just have to learn it, right? But there are all kinds of things, both physical and non-physical, that we use in for. We might say something like, in my hard drive. Now, is this thing physically sitting in your hard drive? Well, kind of. If it's a photo or something, it's kind of there in a way, although it's not maybe contained in the same physical sense that it is for a container, coffee in a cup. Although it's kind of the same logic, right? And so we can take the physical idea and we can extend it to non-physical things like computers, brains, thoughts, minds, dreams. What if something happens in your dream? If something happens in your dream, is there some sort of container of dream and then there's a thing inside of it? That doesn't even make sense, right? But we extend the logic of it and say that, yes, indeed, it kind of is there in that way. So just to make the point that when we say in or on or in fact any other preposition, what we're really saying is this is how people use it. This is how I understand it. Here's the usage. I have this feeling because of maybe many years of exposure to prepositions, and it's the same for any other, including in. Now, what about on? You asked about on. So let me go back to your question then. Now, your question is in or on. What about on? What if I say that I have something on my mind? Does that make sense? Is there something sitting on top of my head? Because I'm sure you know the basic meaning of on is the coffee cup is on the desk, right? The words are on my computer. Well, are they on my computer? Well, in a sense. How do I know if it's in my computer or on my computer? If I typed what I typed before there, would you say it's in or on? What do you think? What's your natural sense? It actually should be on. Why? Well, I can try to rationalize it and explain it. But really, I think the reason is just because that's what we started using for computers when we talk about putting things on the flat surface of the screen and looking at it. Then we say, I looked at it on my computer. I got on my computer and watched a movie. I do some shopping sometimes on my iPad. Are we sitting on the iPad? Sitting down on the iPad? No, of course not. That's insane. But we say that it is kind of on it rather than in it. And the things that are in it might be the apps. And you could, in fact, say apps on my iPad, apps in my iPad. Sometimes that works for both. But there are internal things like storage and memory. That's definitely in, including some non-physical things. So we have to have that awareness of the gray area and the fuzziness between some of these prepositions. Sometimes we can use both. Sometimes it's not clear why one is used over another. But if I go back to what I said before, do I have something on my head physically? No. But if I say I've got something on my mind, even though it's non-physical, it's the same basic logic, and the meaning is I'm thinking about something, I'm worried about something, I'm concerned about something. Okay? And there are too many examples for us to possibly cover in a short answer like this, but I hope you can at least take away the idea that you're not going, that number one, these things are not choices. It's not like choosing what you want on your pizza. It is on your pizza, not in your pizza. It is what's common, and that is correct what's common, because that's how people use it. Now, the other thing I hope you can keep in mind is that the best way to learn this is through exposure, getting a feeling for it, getting used to it, getting the hang of it through seeing example after example after example. I know you guys are probably sick of me talking about courses and stuff, but I do have a course coming out about prepositions that I'm very excited about. It's all about learning through example. We're going to look at 30 examples for each preposition and talk through each one. Right? It's going to be quite intense, but after you finish the course, you're going to have a deep feeling for how all of these prepositions work, not only in and on, but also about and for and at, all of them. Well, most of them. So hopefully that at least answers your question, kind of. If you guys haven't already, I would really appreciate it if you could hit the like button. That would be awesome. And also subscribe if you haven't already so that you can see future videos and live classes. There's less coffee in my cup now, and I put it back on my desk. Also, if you haven't already, make sure you check out my full English courses in the links in the description.